In Tragedy, a true crime podcast, we discuss missing persons cases, violent crime, and other sensitive topics that may be difficult for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Our show is a place where every story matters and every voice deserves to be heard. To support this podcast, you can subscribe at www.tragedyaTrueCrimePodcast.com for early access to new episodes. And join our Facebook community, Tragedy, a True Crime Podcast, for updates, discussions, and ways to support the families we feature. Welcome to Tragedy, a True Crime Podcast. I'm Elisa.
And I'm Michael.
Every family responds to tragedy differently. Some lean on memories, some focus on healing, others become researchers, determined to understand every detail surrounding the person they lost. After Crystal McCrory Jones died on February 9th, 2023, her sister, Jana Guyewski-Lautigar, found herself asking questions she believed had never been fully answered. Rather than accepting uncertainty, she began collecting records, preserving digital evidence, documenting timelines, and organizing thousands of pieces of information into what has become an extensive investigative file. Over the past several years, Jana has worked alongside members of her family to assemble a detailed chronology of events before and after Crystal's death. Her timeline includes public records, phone records, digital evidence, meetings with investigators, and dozens of supporting exhibits. Whether every conclusion drawn from that evidence is ultimately accepted or not, the amount of work invested into preserving these records is remarkable. Today we're talking with Jana, not only as Crystal's sister, but as someone who has spent countless hours documenting what happened, identifying questions she believes still deserve answers, and ensuring that Crystal's story continues to be told. Jana, thank you for being here. And welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me and for simply mentioning Crystal's name. That means more to me than you'll ever know.
So we would like to start with you. If you'll tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship with your sister, Crystal.
Yeah, so my name's Jana, and I'm a mom of two girls. And they were Crystal's, part of Crystal's entire world. That we were part of a group of 4 siblings. Crystal was 10 years older than I am. And we have a brother. He's 14 years older than I am, and then I'm a twin. So essentially, my mom started over with kids, and me and my twin brother essentially grew up as my sister's little babies. We were her baby dolls, and she took us in as that. Like, she was our second mom. And all of my siblings have sons. They all had boy children, and I had the only 2 girls. And so, as a teenager, like, mine and my sister's relationship was kind of little rocky because I was hard-headed and I wouldn't listen. And then when I became a mom, that's when the entire relationship changed. Like, it was phenomenal because, like, she taught me everything of how to be a mom and what it was like to be a girl mom and all the different things. And that's what I'm forever grateful for. And I don't even have the words to say about how grateful I am that Crystal taught me the ways to be a mom.
So let's talk a little bit about what happened in February of 2023. So tell us the context of what happened on that day and what you remember.
On February 9th, I'm a teacher. I just gotten off work. It was just an average day. And I got a call from my oldest brother, Dane, and he asked if I was sitting down. And of course, I asked what was wrong. And he proceeds to tell me that he got a call from Crystal's husband, Tony, that our sister had been found dead. And I just stopped and I was in shock and asked, where and how and what do I do? And I guess you can say the mom and me told my brothers to just stay where they were. I told my oldest brother, he lived in that town, neighboring town next to me. I said, you just stay where you're at. I'm going to call Josh, my twin brother, and I'm headed to Crystal's house. I went to the crime scene, and what should have taken me 26 minutes to get to the crime scene took me 16 minutes. And when I got there, he told me it's a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. And I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say because in reality, I didn't even know if that was my sister in there. And I walked to the crime scene tape, and I'm met by a host of relatives of Tony's. And they're telling me how depressed my sister was, like how she had not been responding normally to text messages, and how she was on an antidepressant, and how she was coming off of it. I mean, just all these different things. And it was kind of like bombarding. And I didn't try at that point to defend my sister or defend a suicide ruling or anything. I just listened. Eventually, they stopped talking for a little while. I think I was there a total of 56 minutes. And then I kind of walked away to myself. And about 10 minutes had passed, and Tony turns and he looks at me and he says, Jana, do you want her funeral in Oak Grove, which is the town that they lived in, or in Bastrop, which is the town that I live in? And that's the town Crystal lived in and grew up in as well. And I just looked at him like, what? How do you even have time to process this and think of a funeral arrangement? Like, I do not know if that's my sister in there. And I kind of sternly turned and looked at him and said Bastrop, and that was it. I just said one word. At this point, there's an investigator I know coming in and out of the house. I've seen the coroner, and that's really the only two individuals I saw. I didn't see a host of law enforcement and people there. I just saw really two people, like inside the crime scene tape. A few minutes passed by. I'm still alone at the crime scene tape. They're talking, the investigator, the coroner. They're coming up to the tape and they're talking to the family of Tony, that they're not coming to me and they're not asking me questions. They're not asking who I am. And they're on a first name basis with Tony because he was once employed by this agency. Not at the time of Crystal's death, but I think he quit like a year prior, maybe a little over a year prior. But he was employed under the same sheriff, under the same lead investigator, with the same coroner. So they knew each other on a first name basis. The only person they didn't know at that crime scene was me. But I stood there and I listened, and the coroner approached Tony and he said, we still have to send her body off for an autopsy. And I was like, thinking to myself, I said, why are you saying the word still? Like, was there another conversation that you had where you weren't going to send her body off for an autopsy? But I just kept my thoughts to myself. I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes passed by after that, and the coroner approaches Tony again and tells Tony that they were bringing her out. He turns and he looks at me and he goes, you don't need to see her like this. And at this point in time, like, I'm past the shock stage. I'm really in like disbelief that nobody's came and talked to me. This family's over here acting like it's a family reunion, and nobody's in tears. Nobody's acting like this could possibly be my sister in this house, not alive. And I turned around, I looked at him and I said, to see her like what, Tony? And he didn't answer me, and he turned and he walked off. The coroner comes out with a blue body bag, and every part of me wanted to reach across the crime scene tape and unzip the body bag and make sure it was my sister in there. And I didn't, because I knew if I did, that ultimately I would be the reason why the crime scene was contaminated, or the reason why the investigation couldn't be completed. I just knew not to do it. I turned around and I walked off. I got in my car and I drove away. I ended up meeting my two brothers at a convenience store with their wives. And we met, talked about things I heard, things that were discussed, what we knew, what we didn't know. And then we went and we told my mom.
Of all of the families that we have spoken to, you have done more research, more investigation, created almost 100-page document of a timeline with links and screenshots, which also does not include the folder that you sent me that has all of the information you've collected along the way. So what prompted you to begin creating this record of the event, and even going back, to collect things that happened before the day that she died?
When I started getting the records, so the first records I got were like from a laptop that Tony had given me that belonged to my sister. And those were the very first records I got before I got a police report, before I got death certificates or an autopsy. I couldn't make sense of them. Like, it was emails and it was Google timeline records. And so I was like, I've got to do something with them. It's just a bunch of documents. And so I put them in just a simple timeline so I could see exactly what happened that day. And then as I did records requests individually, like one at a time, first I started with the police report and things like that. In all honesty, it was my way of staying sane and avoiding grief. And it's probably not the healthiest thing to do, because I didn't grieve my sister the first year after her death. I went straight from, okay, my sister's gone, to now I have to fight for my sister. And it's really evident because the night she passed away, after I got home, because my daughter was, blowing up my phone, where are you at? Why are you at my granny's house? And I lied to her, and because I didn't want to tell my daughters that night. And then I texted the sheriff in the town that I live in, and I simply told him what the stuff that didn't make sense to me. It was evident that I was in like a fight mode. Like, these things don't make sense to me. I'm not questioning the investigation. I'm just saying that I want to investigate it as a homicide until you can prove it's not. That's it. Because that's the way investigations are supposed to happen. The investigation should be treated as a homicide until you can prove it's not the other way around. Not treated as a suicide until you can prove it's not. And I knew that from an internship I did with the local sheriff's department, I think back in 2024, 22, something like that. It was just instilled in me that that's how the system worked. I began collecting documents, and I put it together in the timeline, and I was like, all this is words. And I was like, if I just have words, it's my, just me saying something against somebody else. And I was like, that's when I figured out how to upload links into Google Drive and attach pictures, because without documented proof, you're risking libel, and you're risking defamation and all these kind of things. And that's something I don't want, and I don't do, because it's not about what I say, it's about what the documents show. So I began just uploading the documents one at a time. And I'm thankful I did do it one at a time as far as records requests, because I didn't get an overload at one time of, thousands of pages at once, because I can only imagine that a family goes back and does this from a case 10 years ago. And then they get all these records at one time, because I stayed up like nights of not sleeping, putting it together, because I just knew if I put this together and I did all this work, that an attorney would look at it, or that a legislator would look at it, or congressman, or somebody else would look at the state police, because I knew if I did the work, it would be easier for them to look at. And essentially I was wrong. It didn't matter how much work I did, they still weren't going to look at it, because in their eyes, I was just a grieving sister. I was in denial. But now it helps you guys see why I keep asking the same questions over and over again. And I'm thankful that I did it, because I can add new documents to it, because every couple of weeks or something new, a letter from someone else, and I just add it to the timeline.
Well, we certainly appreciate you sharing it with us, and we're still in the process of going through it. Who all have you shared this with?
So I'm not really picky about the Google Drive being shared, because it's documents and it's public records. You can request them, and you'll be given them. Some of them are my phone records, and I don't mind that. The Dropbox link is I'm very particular about the Dropbox link, and I'll tell you why I separate the two. They're separated because my brothers and my cousin in Germany has access to the Google Drive, which is the story of my sister. They do not have access to the Dropbox link, and that's where the crime scene photos are. And I don't ever want my brothers or my sister's sons or my mom or anybody to see those crime scene photos in their entirety. Now, I know some of them have been published, like the bruising and the things like that, but there's pictures of her in there, in that predicament, and that's not something that I ever want anybody to see. And then the autopsy photos are actually in a different drive, because I don't share those with anybody unless you're a pathologist and you're gonna, do something with pathology, because those are even more revealing and that kind of thing. So that's the reason for the different drives and sharing it with different people. And I think you guys, I did share the Dropbox link with. I do some research like behind the people that I share it with. The Google Drive, not so much. If you want just the proof of why I'm asking questions and you want to see a police report, sure, you're more than welcome to it.
But you mentioned too that there were people that you shared it with, and they just weren't interested in moving anything forward or doing anything about it. Like who was that?
So I've shared the link with every legislator like that I have like in my district. The state police has links to it. The Louisiana Attorney General has the links to it. Let's see, like every congresswoman and congressman like in my district, the United States Attorney General's office, the OIG, like any office, public office you can think of, has the link. No office, every office says that they can't investigate a local sheriff, and the state police has denied investigating it or twice. Like in one letter, they say that we looked at this letter that's dated this date, and then we're declining to investigate it. And I'm not quite sure what they're declining to investigate at that point, because that letter was written in May of 2024. Because there's a difference between investigating my sister's case and investigating the investigation into my sister's case. And I don't think that they realize that. Like, the mission has changed because there's nothing to investigate in my sister's case. Like, no evidence was collected. There's no fingerprints or magic gunpowder residue testing that's going to show up. We can't make up evidence. It's not there. No, nothing's there to collect. I quit going down that avenue because I was just hitting dead ends. I'm not going to know what happened to my sister. So I want the investigation of her death investigated, because had it been investigated properly, we would have answers. We would have an answer of suicide or homicide. And to be honest with you, after 3 years, I'm okay with either one, because I could either be advocating for mental health right now, or I could be advocating for law enforcement reform, which is what I'm advocating for now, and what rights family members have in those investigations. And so there's going to be advocacy work. I just don't know which direction to take it in, because I don't know what happened.
And when I looked at the case too, there was a couple of things that really stood out to me. Like, for instance, when you think about gunshot suicides with women, that percentage is remarkably lower than men. So right away, to draw that conclusion with a woman in particular is, I wouldn't say is completely unheard of, but something that I personally would probably not have chosen to do first. And in this case, part of the controversy was how quickly that conclusion was drawn. It's like it was drawn within just a few hours. And then the second piece that stuck out to me when looking through some of the information is the shell casing dilemma. Like, there was no shell casing found at the crime scene, or it didn't exist in any photos, but then it was produced later. Correct. So the question is, whenever you're collecting evidence, I would have expected a picture specifically of the shell casing to have been made. And you're telling me, I haven't looked through every file yet, every picture, but you're telling me that doesn't exist in any of the photos.
Right. And that's what the sheriff told us. The shell casing that was produced a week later by Tony, he calls my brother, and he says, my brother described it as a golden ticket finding. Hey, I found this shell casing, but please don't make it a big deal with Detective Alan Irby. That he's already upset because I found it. And Detective Irby was the one that drew the conclusion that it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound in 1 hour and 40 minutes. I'll go back to his years in law enforcement. He's not a rookie. He's 30-year veteran law enforcement. And, these aren't just statements that I'm saying. He turned over these recordings to me, knowing that he stated that it was self-inflicted. And I don't know if he just didn't think I was going to listen to it, or what he thought I was going to do with it. But, I mean, you gotta know what you're turning over. But the shell casing came a week later, and that's what we approached the sheriff with. And again, it's recorded too. Thank goodness for one-party state laws. If you don't know about one-party state laws, just definitely look that up. Louisiana is a one-party state law. So, and my job as little sister was to basically not say anything. I was gonna let my brother handle it, and I was going to record everything. And I didn't even tell my brother I was recording. I just did it. I'm glad I did, because the sheriff states, and he said plain as day, that the showcasing is plain as day in a crime scene photo. So that was what warranted us to go to the district attorney to look at crime scene photos. And I wasn't looking for specific pictures of my sister. I was looking for a picture of a shell casing that never came up. I was like, well, maybe the district attorney, if you listen to that recording, she doesn't know how to pull up a file. She called in her investigator to work the computer. So I was like, well, maybe it was just overlooked. So I gave him benefit of the doubt again, and I requested the crime scene photos. And what kind of, blows my mind is I had to drive to get a CD of these crime scene photos. So I'm like, it's not like they sent them to me digitally. Now they put them in a Dropbox link and send them to the attorneys, but they wouldn't do that for me. I had to pay $10, and I had to go get them from the sheriff's office from a CD. And I came home, and I had to find somehow to play a CD, because who has a CD player that hooks to a computer? And I put it in there, and the first thing I saw was not a picture of a shell casing. very first picture that came up was something that had never been discussed with us, with the sheriff or the district attorney, and that was the pillow that had the hole in it, the gunshot through it, that obviously was placed over my sister's head. And that, like, that stopped me in my tracks, because I'd never been told about that in any conversation I had. And then after I got over that, I went to look for the shell casing, and then I noticed it wasn't there, and that they had circled something about a reflection off of a makeup brush or something, and they were saying that was the reflection of the shell casing. And clearly it's not. It's not the reflection of the shell casing, but that is not what the sheriff told us. The sheriff said it's plain as day in the crime scene photos, and it's not plain as day. If it's plain as day, you wouldn't be circling a reflection. And that's what we go back to. Not only is it an improper investigation because you didn't find the shell casing, but why are you telling stories to a grieving family? Just tell us the truth. You didn't find it, and you messed up.
Talk to me a little about the pillow. Like, when you say you saw this picture of the pillow, and I mean, we've all seen movies, and pillows are often used as like a suppressor for a firearm. And so, did they give any indication on how the pillow supported suicide in that scenario? Because it seems, I don't know, it seems awkward.
No. So the pillow is not mentioned in any police report. It's not mentioned in a coroner's report, autopsy report, no report. And I don't know who took these pictures, because the coroner sent me through certified mail. That's the only way he would do it. He wouldn't do anything electronic. And one had the pillow, like the singeing a little bit, you could see it. But whoever took the pictures that were sent of the entire pillow with the hole in it found it very important, because there's 4 of them. There's 4 pictures showing the hole in the pillow. Obviously it was kind of a shock to them for it to be there. Otherwise, why would you take 4 separate pictures of it? We've never been able to ask a question about it. The last conversation that was had was a phone conversation between the sheriff and I about the time of death, which what I was actually referring to was the time of injury that was listed on my sister's state-issued death certificate, and then all communication stopped.
It's interesting to me because when I think about it, I mean, one of the very first questions I would think of is, was there an indication that the bullet traveled through the pillow prior to the person versus after? I'm not sure. I haven't. Yeah. So in prior, it goes back to the whole, if this was a homicide, would it make sense for the pillow to go over that person's face as part of that homicide, or would they want to put it over their own face to suppress the sound for some reason?
Right.
I don't know. Like I said, to me, it creates a lot of questions. And one thing I'm going to be doing is running some statistics on when the pillow has been used and what that scenario was. I think that'd be an interesting thing for me to look up.
As far as like how she was found and who found her, and I know we haven't gotten into that yet, but was that pillow moved so that you could see her face, or was it like that when you saw her? Like, because the placement to me and to others, it doesn't make sense. Like none of it makes sense of how the pillow is placed in her arm and the gun. None of it makes sense to us unless she was moved. If she was moved and somebody can justify that or verify that, then that it would make more sense. But nobody will answer questions.
Yeah, and one thing I want to be super clear on too is, we were talking about the shell casing before we talked about the pillow, and to me, it's when the sheriff's office says that the shell casing was obvious, you're saying that you can't find the shell casing in any pictures.
No, it's not in any pictures. It doesn't. It doesn't exist. They did put a picture in there with a yellow circle, and they say that is the shell casing that's circled, and it's a reflection of a makeup brush. And that's not it. You have to look at the photo. It's not the shell casing, and it's the reflection of a makeup brush. It's just not there. Like, and it's definitely not plain as day in a crime scene photo.
Yeah, and even the shell casing itself, I find problematic listening to this. Is if let's go ahead and say, okay, they didn't see it, and let's say they missed it, and let's just go and make that assumption for a second. That'd be one thing that you wouldn't want to miss, but let's just go ahead and say they missed it. Now it's found by someone else a week later that is also affiliated with that office, at least was at some point. And so this has a major conflict of interest concern.
Right.
And here's what I wasn't clear on. Did he collect it and then take it to the sheriff's office, or did he find it and say, come get it?
That's what I'm also not clear on. And the sheriff admits in that recording, I think his statement goes a little like this, like, I don't know how 5 sets of eyes missed it, but we did. Like, he admits to missing it. Like, there's no question about it. He admits that they missed it. And
wait a second, let me stop you there. He admits to missing it, but yet he also said it's obvious
yes.
in the photos.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yes. Those two things can't be the same.
Yes. And that's where the questions come from. Like, you're saying one thing in this recording that hasn't been edited. You're not disputing the recording. You never disputed this recording of you and me and my brother and my sister-in-law and my cousin. Like, nobody's ever disputed any recording or any evidence I've put forth, ever. And if they did, it would make me feel a little bit better, because at least you're listening to it, and we have some back and forth conversations. But that's the thing, is nobody's ever done that. So what you said, and what you presented to me, and they don't line up. And you're like, the conflict of interest, that's huge, because we asked in that same recorded conversation for the state police to come in due to the conflict of interest of Tony once working for the West Carroll Parish Sheriff's Office, and for the information that my brother had obtained from the lead detective that he had known Tony for 30 years. And I'm going to be super clear. I've never spoken to the lead detective, ever, not one time, for the simple fact that the text message that I sent to the sheriff where I live, in the parish that I live in, I sent him the text, and I said, I said, Mike, I know it's outside your jurisdiction, but my sister died tonight in West Carroll Parish, and I need to know that everything's being done, and it's being investigated as a homicide until it's proved it's not. I might be in denial. And I listed the 3 things that bothered me. And it was what the coroner said about the autopsy, it was what Tony said about the funeral, and then it was about Tony knowing that it was a single gunshot wound to the head. It was those 3 things. And he said, he responded immediately, and he said, I'm flying in tonight. I'll give him a call tomorrow. He kept his word. He called over to West Carroll, and he said, I know this girl, or this kid, he calls me a kid, and I know her family, and she just wants answers about her sister. Like, they're super close. He explains all that. And that lead detective, Irby, tells my brother that he's not going to speak to me because I'm just a troublemaker, because I questioned his investigation. That is not what I did. I just simply stated that I wanted it investigated as a homicide to prove it's not. I knew nothing about the investigation at that time, but what I knew standing there was the day that she died. It's not 2 weeks later. It's not when I got a police report. It is the day that she passed away. And so because of that, the detective has never responded to a phone call. He's never answered the phone for me. He's never replied to an email. Nothing. There's nothing from the detective between him and I. Absolutely nothing.
You started out by talking about when you got the phone call and you headed over to the house, and then you also indicated a little bit about your understanding of what happened before you arrived at the house. So can you, what is your understanding of, the interactions, who was there, all those things that happened before you arrived, now that you've gone back and thought more about that?
Like, I knew where Tony was prior to my sister's death because of the records that I found on the laptop. Like, I knew his exact location of where he was at. And again, he's never disputed this. He had a chance to. He was 14 minutes away from their house when he called for the welfare check. Yeah, Officer Chuck Harris, go do a welfare check on my sister, but he didn't call it into the sheriff's department. He didn't call 911. He called it in on a personal cell phone. And like I said, he was 14 minutes away, and we were told, relayed to my brother, that he had a karate studio, because they owned a karate studio in Oak Grove, that he had a classroom full of students, and he couldn't leave to go check on my sister. That narrative has changed, and in Tony's words, he decided to send Officer Harris to do a welfare check because his gut told him something was wrong after he had called and texted her and she didn't show up for her doctor's appointment. Officer Harris was a school resource officer at a school in another town, same parish, but just a different town. He said he knew that he was off of work and that he would be like in the vicinity because he says they're neighbors. Now, again, that's not completely true because the address listed on the coroner's report, along with a lot of other errors on the coroner's report for that officer, is not That address didn't exist in 2023. It exists now because it's a Dollar General across the street from the house where Crystal passed away in. That's the address of the Dollar General. And that officer lives like down the street, like 2 miles down the road. Now they had neighbors. They had 3 neighbors like that lived directly next to them. None of them were ever asked any questions. None of them were interviewed about anything. So I don't know why that was such a big deal in the police reports to say that, that officer and Tony were neighbors. So that's why he called him to check on her, because he tried to make out like they were friends. And Tony had to explain to this officer that her name is Crystal. Well, if you're friends and you're neighbors, you're not going to have to tell her that her name is Crystal. Before that, Tony was around town. I mean, he worked for himself. He was around town. He checked his daughter out of school. It wasn't what my brother and I read in the original police report with the district attorney, which stated that it just stated his whereabouts could be accounted for the entire day. It didn't go into detail. What ultimately they did in the second police report that we got is they took the details that I gave the sheriff of that Google timeline location record, which is essentially the beginning of that timeline, and they put it in a second police report. And that's where the second police report came from, with specific times that he was at Sonic and specific times he was at some other place to eat and the time he checked his daughter out of school. It came from the information I gave them 2.5 weeks after my sister passed away. All of that kind of comes together in the fact that we were denied a copy of the original police report by the district attorney. And again, it's recorded. And her reasoning for denying us a copy was, I'm not even sure you're supposed to be reading that. That didn't make sense to us, because why wouldn't we be allowed to read a simple police report? We've got an autopsy, but we can't read a police report.
You started talking a little bit about some contradictions across timelines, and I know that you have created a document that is specific to some of those contradictions. Can you tell us more about that?
Dr. Peretti did her autopsy. I wasn't quite sure why she was sent from Louisiana to Arkansas for an autopsy when we have pathologists here, but apparently Arkansas is contracted through West Carroll Parish. As soon as I saw the autopsy, her name is spelled wrong, and I know that that's just some clerical issues, but her name was spelled wrong. Well, then her hair color and her eye color were wrong. My sister had black hair and brown eyes, and it said blondish hair and blue eyes. And so that's external things that could have been maybe a little off, but then it had the original autopsy had 2 different case numbers on it, like 0105 and 0106, like one on one page, one on the other. But probably the most critical thing, I think, in that autopsy, the original one, was the fact that her internal organs were wrong. And I know in autopsies, a lot of it is copying and pasting just things over because they're going to be the same throughout every autopsy. But you have to verify that, and if you don't, then some people are going to catch you. And I think that's kind of what happened in this case, because my sister had a hysterectomy, maybe like 6 months prior to her death, and all of her female organs were listed as present. And so collectively, the autopsy to me meant nothing. There was really no medical or physical evidence to support homicide or suicide. Like, there was nothing there to really explain to me how anything happened or anything. I held in the discrepancies. I didn't reach out to the pathologist or anything until Christmas Day of the same year, so 10 months later. First really big holiday without Crystal, and I was super emotional, and I reached out through my just regular Gmail account, not through some government office, not through a secure email, a Gmail account. And I just told him I was Crystal's sister. And he took my word for it. He didn't ask for identifying information. He didn't ask for anything, not even her death certificate. I just sent him her autopsy report. And I listed the things that were wrong. And he changed them on the autopsy. He amended the autopsy, changed everything I listed that was wrong, with the exception of her liver status. He changed that, but I never said anything about that because at the time I didn't know what that meant. Like, I hadn't gotten to that point to where I was reading every single word and researching it. And he only changed it by 2 words. But those 2 words are super important because in the original one, it gives the indication her body had been moved after death. In the second autopsy, report, not the actual autopsy, because she was cremated against our wishes. So there's no body that he's physically autopsying. It's worded as if her body, like it had just, like she passed away and it stayed at rest. Like that was it. That raised a huge red flag to me once I realized that he changed it. Because why would you change something I didn't bring to your attention? It bothered me so much that I did file with the Arkansas State Board of Medical Examiners against him, not for necessarily amending what I brought to his attention, although I don't think that that's proper procedures and protocols for amending something, but because he amended the liver status. And I asked for the proof that he had that, allowed him to amend all that, not just my word. And they ultimately said that, they found that it was some clerical errors and it should have been more thorough, but there was no wrongdoing because he could support everything he did in his notes. So I asked for the notes, and all of a sudden those notes are not public records, and that's where it ended.
Holy shit. I just need to say, sorry, you can't see our faces because, we don't do a video on our podcast, but I'm dumbfounded right now with everything that you're telling me, because even something as simple as, okay, we have a clerical error on the name, and she has a funny spelling to her last name, and I made the same error when I made the appointment. So I get that piece.
But when this was her first name, though, not her last name.
Oh, first name. Okay. So I got the first name right. And so, but what stuck out to me in what you're saying is we have blonde hair, blue eyes, and we have someone who's had a hysterectomy that now in the report, and they had all of their female parts. Did anyone ask the question of whether we got the report of some other person?
Yeah, I proposed that to him. He communicated with me back and forth a little while until ultimately, I guess he just got tired of me and redirected me back to the sheriff's department, which is like not going to happen. So, I questioned that too. I was like, why, if the communication should have been redirected back to the sheriff's department, why did he communicate with me, and answer some of these questions that I had? Because I was very polite, and my sister's case taught me something very important, and that's to put things in writing. If you can't put it in writing, put it in a recording or a text or an email or something like that, and have verifiable proof. And so, the text or the emails that we had, I turned everything in, the whole thread. And, they said that goes against the policy, but he's also a private pathologist. He's not attached to the Arkansas State Crime Lab anymore. So, there's that. And then, I contacted the Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners because my sister's case happened in Louisiana. But they can't hold anybody accountable for anything because the autopsy happened in Arkansas. And so it crosses jurisdictions, and it just, there's so many different avenues I could take for advocacy for legislation about not moving bodies across state lines. Like, leave them in the state, unless there's some sort of extenuating circumstance. Leave them in the state where the crime happened. Because if you don't, this happens.
You run into this problem, this clerical /right/ I mean, this is a mess. This is anyone listening to this is just a mess. And I'm even thinking of, we have a case, the Deanna Merrifield case. One of the things that really stuck out to me that's almost similar to this is some random person from, I think, Kentucky, or maybe we don't even know, called in and said, oh, Deanna's here, she's fine. And there was no confirmation. They just closed the case, move on. Great. Glad somebody found her.
She's back.
And this is something, and
that's it.
Emailed in, oh, by the way, here's all the details of the autopsy. By the way, I'm not the medical examiner. I'm the sister. I provided no ID. Oh, sure. Let's just go ahead and make all these amendments without verifying any information whatsoever.
Correct.
What I'm learning here through this conversation...
Sorry, I'm just getting mad thinking about it.
So originally we came to this work because Michael's uncle was murdered, and it's an unsolved homicide. And we have been really pushing the family, like, can we get medical records? Can we they give us very little citing open and active case, which we're about to talk about. My learning here is, like, that's not the end. Just getting those records, then you have verify, right? Verify, check, read, go back. I'm learning just so much from speaking to our families. This is my learning I'm getting right now from you, is that's not the end. You get those records. That doesn't mean, yeah, I got the records. You need to check and make sure they're correct before you decide to try to make any determinations or derive any theories from them.
Well, the truth is, and I try to be, like, super realistic, is every professional Like, I'm a professional teacher and I'm a professional social worker, but we're all human and we all make mistakes. But it's owning up to those mistakes and what you do after you make those mistakes that really determines who you are as a person. And that thing, like I've even said before, if the sheriff was to come out and publicly, if you publicly came out and said, you know what, I screwed up, I'm sorry, let the state police come in and investigate, or I'm sorry for what we did or didn't do, I would take the billboard down, because there's a billboard in that town of my sister's face that says, why didn't she deserve a proper investigation? And it's got the sheriff's department's name and phone number. It says West Carroll Parish Sheriff's Office. And it stays there, and I will continue to pay for it until we get answers. So it's up there, and I would stop getting her story aired on the news and all that kind of stuff if you would just take accountability for what you didn't do. Because if you take accountability, then that means maybe the next family you run into, you won't lie to them. Or you'll think twice before you don't do an investigation just because somebody takes an antidepressant. And if that's all I can get, then that's all I can get. I can't make evidence appear, but I can make another family not have to go through what we've gone through. And I can't get anybody to even take that simple step.
Yes, and we are in a similar situation with Michael's uncle. And I think there have been some rumblings and maybe some lightly saying, yes, we know we messed up the crime scene. In one venue, they'll say that. But I don't know that anybody's really just stepped forward and named it in the way that I think Michael's family should hear it, which is exactly the same thing you're asking for. So what is the status of the case right now?
It was ruled by the lead detective, an hour and 40 minutes, self-inflicted. It was ruled on the pathology report as a suicide. And then on her state-issued death certificate, it is ruled a suicide. And we were under the assumption it was closed because of the fact I got all the records. Like, I didn't have to have an attorney to get all these records. I got all the records and then I got an attorney. And you shouldn't do that. Like, if you're a family and you're listening to this, don't try to search for an attorney. Getting a private investigator that really knows what they're doing and is in it for the right reasons is probably worth more than getting an attorney. So focus more on there to get answers to your questions than an attorney. A private investigator who is invested in what you are trying to reach, they're going to get you the answers that a sheriff's department didn't get you, because that's what happened in our case. So her case was ruled a suicide, and I got all the records, and then we got a consultant involved. She's a private investigator, but not licensed in our state, and she did a public records request for the communication between the lawyers and the sheriff's office, because things just didn't line up like we thought they should. And now they said they gave this letter to the consultant, not anybody in my family. And it states, from the sheriff's attorney in his role as the sheriff, not personally, just in his role as the sheriff, we cannot, give you this information due to Crystal McCrory Jones's case remaining open without a formal disposition. And I still don't really know what that means, but I did talk to a couple of attorneys. It means they don't know what happened. Without a formal disposition means they just reopened it with no evidence of anything. They don't know if it's suicide or homicide. So her case then, as of June 17th, 2024, remained open without a formal disposition. My thing was, if her case remained open without a formal disposition because you don't know what happened, then I don't want her death certificate to say suicide. I want it to be undetermined. Let's just make everybody happy. Let's go in the middle. So I tried to get the sheriff to tell me the status of her case through an email, and I couldn't get it through a regular email, so I did a public records request. Eventually, through some channels, he did respond in writing that there is no status to report on her case. I don't know what that means. It's in response to the public records request. However, he told the local news station in November of this past year, 2025, it was an open case and it was attached to the local Crime Stoppers. So to me, that indicates it's under an investigation of some sort. And then in January...
Well, let me interrupt there. That's such a strange thing to say, because Crime Stoppers is about reporting crime.
Correct.
And so he's saying that it's with the local Crime Stoppers. That statement makes no sense, because all the Crime Stoppers do is take the tip and then provide it to the associated criminal investigative unit or organization or sheriff's office. The case isn't with the Crime Stoppers. That's not how that works.
Right. And that's kind of where recording we have of the lead detective with a criminologist that called inquiring about Crystal's case, it doesn't match, because when it aired on the news station and they attached it, it's attached to Crime Stoppers, like you can listen to it. His recording states he talked to her for a little while, and then he says, well, I can't discuss anything further. We have attorneys involved in this. I don't know why there's attorneys involved in this, because I don't have an attorney involved in this. I just want you to tell me what happened to my sister. If you can't tell me what happened to her, then tell me why you didn't investigate it. There's no attorney needed for that. Like, I don't have any pending suits. There's no litigation. I'm not suing anybody. I don't want your money. I don't want your role as sheriff. I don't want anything. I just want an answer. So they apparently have attorneys involved. That was his first point. And then she said, well, if there's, if I investigate this and I come up with some new leads, some new information, can I email you? And he says no. That's what the lead detective does.
Well, that's weird.
What?
Oh, well, remember, we have had someone affiliated with the sheriff's office who told one of our families to stop reaching out and talking to us because we were creating too many tips. There were too many tips coming forward.
What?
That's exactly
exactly what we said.
We're both sitting here in the wet chairs.
Like, how do you know which tips are good or bad if you don't actually investigate them? But he was just, we're not getting any good tips. I was like, well, I'm sorry you have to get up out of your desk, but
And
we
do
need you
your
to
job.
investigate a crime.
Right.
I do want to go back to something real quick, because I know you said it and we kind of went past it. So I need to bring us back to it a little bit, because people who heard it are gonna think this. So I want to get some clarity here. You said that she was on antidepressants,
Yes.
and I know antidepressants. It says right on the label that you can have
Yes.
thoughts of suicide, but I also
Absolutely.
know that it's typically with younger people, and it's typically only for their first few weeks. And so I know what Crystal's age was. I want you to tell our listeners how old she was, but also, do you know how long she'd been on antidepressants, and had that prescription changed recently or within a few weeks of when this happened?
Crystal was 43 when she passed away. I want to be super clear. She was on Zoloft like for years. That's not what they're trying to say that caused the suicide. It's actually the antidepressant add-on that was given because her son had moved out of the house, her youngest son, and joined the Navy after high school. And super transparent here, my sister was sad, very sad, because she had empty nest syndrome. But there's a difference between being sad and suicidal, totally different. And I mean, she just learned she was having a grandbaby, and there's so many things that, just don't point to suicide, but there was an add-on to her antidepressant, but that add-on was given in June. Like, I was able to get access to their prescriptions, a 2 milligram dose of Abilify. Now, this is June of 22, and she passes away in February of 23. And what they're claiming, and this is just from what Tony says, is that she was coming off of the Abilify, not the Zoloft. Zoloft was in her system at the time of her death. She was coming off the Abilify because she thought that that's what was making her feel like sick to her stomach. And she had scheduled a doctor's appointment the morning that she died for 2:30 about the antidepressant making her sick to her stomach. But then he also states that she had quit cold turkey 2 days prior. 2 days off of a 2 milligram antidepressant. I will say this. I kind of put myself in my sister's shoes, not necessarily to want to feel what that feels like, whatever that felt like, if that was the case. But I wanted to see if you come off of an antidepressant add-on, what does it make you feel like? Because I'm on an antidepressant and I also take an add-on, and I just take a different one, and I wanted to see. And so I kind of did the same thing, and made me feel like crap, and it didn't make my head hurt. And he did say she complained of a headache, but I absolutely did not have those thoughts. They did not cross my mind. It just didn't make me feel that way. So I don't know the ins and outs of Abilify. I know there's a warning label on it. There's a warning label on every single antidepressant and antidepressant add-on. I'm not gonna, I don't want to justify saying that couldn't have happened and she committed suicide. I don't want to say that she didn't, because they took a picture of a prescription bottle, but it's so blurry you can't see it. But in the third police report they wrote, because there's 3 of them, they clarified that picture is of Xanax. The amount of Xanax in her system was like it was coming out of her system. Like she'd taken it the night before. Completely normal levels. Same with Zoloft, completely normal levels. Matter of fact, Zoloft was like she had taken it the day that she passed away. So she got up and she took her medicine, called in a doctor's appointment, supposedly, to her doctor because she wasn't feeling well, and just simply didn't go. And that's what just doesn't add up to us. What happened in the events between the doctor's appointment, scheduling the doctor's appointment, and then her being found not alive.
So first, we want to start just by thanking you for being so transparent and sharing what you've learned, and even speaking directly to some of our family members in support of them. And we just want to close by, we always offer, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we did not give you an opportunity to speak directly to?
If Tony listens to this and he hears me and he doesn't even have to join forces with me. If he wants to attempt to reach out to the state police or the Attorney General's office or whoever to have Crystal's investigation looked at, and he needs assistance in writing something or guidance or whatever, my email and phone number, all that's still the same. And I'll help you. And you send it through your email and you communicate as her husband. You don't need me to communicate as your side partner. If it makes you feel more comfortable, I'll do it. But you have all the power, and I'll help you use it if that's what you're willing to do, because I just want this to not happen to somebody else, because it doesn't just affect my family. It affects Tony's family too. And I understand that. But at the end of the day, it's not about who it affects. It's about getting answers for Crystal, because Crystal's case, unfortunately, is not unique. Like, it happens in every small town. And we know that. I'm just the loudest, and that's why her case gets the attention, because I don't stop asking questions.
You've been listening to Tragedy, a true crime podcast. Our purpose is to honor victims by sharing their stories through the voices of friends, family, and those whose lives were forever changed. If today's episode resonated with you, we encourage you to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast so these important stories continue to be heard. Together, we can preserve their memories and ensure their voices are never forgotten. If you have ideas for cases we should cover or questions about what you heard, you can connect with us through our Facebook group, Tragedy, a True Crime Podcast, on X at Tragedy Podcast, by email at tragedyaTrueCrimePodcast@gmail.com, or by visiting our website, www.tragedyaTrueCrimePodcast.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope you'll join us next time.